Hello, it's Jimmy. It's so windy. Hello, I wanted to take part in the Spring Into Reading-athon, and I was building up my TBR yesterday, and I've got 5 books for out of the 6 topics, and the 6th one is the group read How to Hang a Witch, and they have it at this library, which is a short bus ride from where I live, but it wasn't available at the library by my house or the one by my work. So this morning, today I'm on a late shift, I start work at midday, so this morning I've got up early and come out to the library. Unfortunately, it's not open yet, so luckily it's in a lovely park, so I'm just chilling in the park and thought I'd start maybe doing a vlog for this readathon. I got it. It wasn't on the shelf, but I asked the librarian and she had a look and it turned out to be in the staff room, so maybe one of the librarians was reading it. And now it's raining. I'm going to get the bus to work and maybe go to the other library close to my work and sit there and read or something. Hey, so it's Tuesday, it's the second official day of the Spring Into Reading-athon. Yesterday I read my first book from my TBR, How to Hang a Witch, the group read. I wanted to read it first, especially after I went to the other library to get it, and also because that's the one everyone's reading, so it'll be more fun so I can take part in the conversations about it. It's the morning on Tuesday, I'm thinking about what I'll read today, possibly Autumn by Ali Smith. Annoyingly, there is something noisy going on outside. It looks like they are doing something to a tree. So, How to Hang a Witch, what did I think of it? It was, to be honest, I think I enjoyed it more than I thought I might. It was a lot like a kind of an American teen film or show or book. It was funny how it kind of used British as a shorthand for sort of old-fashioned. I think throughout the first half of the book, I was not as into it, but in the second half, I got more into it. I wanted to know what was going to happen. There was lots of action. It was definitely entertaining. For me, it was structured like a thriller, and it was definitely better than some thrillers I've read. I'm glad I read it. I definitely enjoyed it. It was entertaining. I'm curious to know what happens in the second one. Will I end up reading it? I'm not sure. I'll see what I know some people are reading it in the readathon because it's got green on the cover. So I'll see what they said about it and see if the library has it and possibly end up reading that. I want to know if certain characters reappear in the second book. So I don't know how much to say about it without spoiling it. But yeah, I guess I'm invested enough in the characters to want to know what happened next. I'm about 50 pages out of about 250 into the second book, my second book of the readathon, Autumn by Ali Smith, and so far it's really good. It's really funny, interesting, has sort of dream-like elements. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it. Well, I finished Autumn, and what a cracking read. I thought it was really good. My first Ali Smith, I definitely want to read more. And I think that I'm glad I read this on a day off when I could read it pretty much straight through in the space of a few hours so I could get into the rhythm of it. It's not very plotty. There's not a lot of plot. It's more like a collage that Ali Smith is talking you through, and the collage has lots of little areas in it which each are brimming with emotion, and together it all forms one coherent, solid piece of art. and it talks about the Brexit referendum and things like that a little bit. I feel like the Brexit-y stuff wasn't that sort of significant for me in liking the book. It was more the rest of it. I definitely think the book is a beautiful work of art, very emotional read for me, brought me through a whole range of emotions and gave me a lot to think about. So I'm cooking and watching some booktube videos. I think the next book I'm going to read, which I'm probably going to start today, is The People of the Abyss. But this readathon is going along great, so I'm looking forward to cracking into this. Alright, so it's Wednesday afternoon. I started this last night. After reading the introduction, I was thinking, Jack London sounds like a terrible person. I'm ready to throw this book away once I've read it, but I'll read it anyway because it's on my TBR. But then I've read a couple of chapters and he is a bloody good writer, even if he is a terrible person, so I can see why it's stuck around and remained a classic for so long. So we'll see how I get on with the rest of it. So I'm a bit over halfway through now, and I'm enjoying it more than I thought I would, from the introduction at least. It's mainly interesting from a kind of historical perspective, finding out about what things were like at the time, and also what people like Jack London thought at the time. There was a chapter on someone called Dan Cullen, who was a bloke, a dock worker and trade unionist, and died in sad circumstances as described in one of the chapters of this book. And I was interested in that chapter especially because he's got the same surname as me. I feel like I'd rather have read something by Dan Cullen, who genuinely lived in these conditions, in these circumstances, in this time, rather than Jack London, who was sort of a much wealthier American who went and sort of pretended to live in these circumstances and then wrote up his impressions and opinions. Anyway, so I'm cracking on. Got about half the book left to go. It's Friday morning. I didn't do any filming yesterday, but on Wednesday evening I finished The People of the Abyss by Jack London, and yesterday I read These Bones Will Rise Again by Panashe Chigumadzi. So The People of the Abyss, it was an interesting read. I was definitely entertained by it. I do think Jack London had a perspective on the world that was fairly normal at the time, but is quite sort of abhorrent to the modern reader, with a very kind of race sciencey tinge to it. He talks about the people as being like a new separate race of people from having lived in severe poverty, basically. And the way he talks about people is quite dehumanizing. On the other hand, it's interesting from a historical point of view to see how he thought, and there is some historical representation of what was going on at that time in East London, but I would have much rather have read something by someone who was genuinely living in that situation rather than someone who was inserting himself into that situation, and ideally by someone who wasn't going to be racist about it. These Bones Will Rise Again is really good. It kind of blends the author's family history with the history of Zimbabwe, and she's taking kind of a new perspective on them, and she says that the normal places that we look for answers may be inadequate for one reason or another. They exclude certain narratives, they highlight certain things, and basically she has a quite unfixed view of history, which I think makes a lot of sense and is quite important, and the way she goes about elaborating on that I think is really nice and makes for an interesting read. If you're interested in the history of Zimbabwe over the past 130 years, or what was happening in Zimbabwe at the end of 2017 with the overthrow of Robert Mugabe, then it's a great read. If you just want to read someone's sort of personal family history and them exploring their roots, then it's a great read. It's done in quite a different way to a lot of books that I've read that cover similar topics, and I'd definitely recommend it if it sounds at all appealing. Also, I just wanted to give a brief shout out to Sora at Banzai Reads. I highly recommend her booktube channel. She does vlogs and she talks about the books that she likes. She reads a lot of YA and manga, but also reads horror and gothic fiction and quite a variety really. She does great videos with gift suggestions and seasonal themed books and things like that. And her blogs are very sort of open and honest and personal. And in her most recent vlog, at the time that I'm filming this, she talked about her feelings regarding the shootings in New Zealand, and I thought that was really touching. She's got a great channel, great editing, so definitely check her out. And I'll put the link in the description to this video. Okay, so it's Monday now. The Spring Into Reading-athon is over. On Friday, or whenever it was, I took part in the live chat bit of the discussion, so that was fun. So I'm just going to do a roundup of the books I read and the books that were on my TBR and how I got on. So in the order that I read them, I read the group read, How to Hang a Witch. It was good, fun, entertaining YA about witches and ghosts and stuff like that. There is a book out this year that's out already called The Familiars by Stacey Halls that I haven't read, but people who took part in the readathon and who enjoyed this and are into witchy stuff might enjoy The Familiars. So it's based on the Pendle witch trials, which was some witch trials that happened in the UK that were a bit similar to the Salem witch trials, I think. So if you did like this, maybe try The Familiars. After that, I read Autumn by Ali Smith. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to reading Winter, and spring is about to come out and everybody seems to think it's amazing. This was a real sort of piece of art, so I definitely recommend it. And I do recommend taking some time aside and sitting down with it properly rather than reading it in little bits, because I think you need to sink into the atmosphere of it to enjoy it properly. Then I read The People of the Abyss by Jack London. I do think Jack London is kind of a bad person with some terrible ideologies, but I did enjoy this book. It was interesting from a kind of historical perspective, and I do think it's well written, and so make of that what you will. Then I read These Bones Will Rise Again by Panashe Chigumadzi. This, I think, is a really good book. It's a short read. I highly recommend it if you're interested in Zimbabwe or history or family history or different approaches to those things, and emphasizing the role of people who've been left out of the official versions of those histories, especially women. It's a good book. I definitely recommend it. Those are all the ones that I actually finished from my TBR. What I didn't read all of was this, even though it's tiny, Milk and Honey, a celebration of Jewish lesbian poetry. I did read some of the poems in there, but I didn't read the whole collection. 5 Plays by Anton Chekhov. I was going to read this, but after I read the other 4 in 4 days, which is a lot faster than I normally read, I think I was a bit tired out. So I started listening to an audiobook, and I was bringing this with me to read, but didn't get very far with it. I did read half of the introduction, but one thing that really bothers me about introductions, and is the case on this one, is when the introduction spoils the endings of things and spoils the stories. So the introduction seemed to be going through the plays in this book and other plays that Anton Chekhov had written, comparing them and discussing his development and saying, oh, at the end of this play, this happens and it ends up being all happy and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of this play, the main character dies of a heartbreak, and at the end of that play, he shoots somebody or something. And I just thought it's a bit annoying, even though it's a classic that obviously was written, these plays were written over 100 years ago. Like, I haven't read them yet, because some of the information is interesting to contextualize and tell you about his life and the context behind the plays. But I sort of feel like you could put that at the end of the book and then have the opportunity to read the plays and then read about them afterwards and then think about it and go, oh, I can see how that fits together. So anyway, I read half of the introduction and then thought, right, I'm going to skip the rest of the introduction because it's spoiling everything, but then I never actually started any of the plays. So I finished 4 of the 6 books on my TBR, which is way more than I expected to, and I read fragments of the other 2, which is all I thought I might end up reading. So overall, it was a very fun readathon, and thanks to Clint from Reads Readers and Melanie from Completely Melanie for organising it, and I look forward to the next readathon they organise. If you took part in the readathon, how did you get on? What books did you read? What did you think of How to Hang a Witch, the group read, if you read it? What do you think of this vlog? This is the first vlog I've ever done for my first readathon I've ever done. And if you want to get in touch, you can leave a comment on YouTube, or you can tweet me at Jimmy, JIIM_E, or you can get me on Instagram at Jimmy_can_read. And this week, while this was going on, I made a Goodreads account, which I didn't have before. So add me on Goodreads as well. I'll put the link in the description.